My husband is a man of profound contrasts. In public, he is Leo Sterling, the powerful and composed CEO of a major corporation, a figure who can be genuinely intimidating to those who don't know him. But the moment he walks through our front door, that persona dissolves. At home, he is just Leo, my Leo, an incredibly affectionate man who constantly seeks hugs and kisses, always wanting to be close. He has a playful, almost puppy-like devotion that I find both endearing and, at times, a little distracting. I often have to remind him to focus on his work, but he usually just grins, unfazed, and tells me that I'm his entire world. Today, the company was holding an important all-hands meeting. Usually, as a junior employee, I would be relegated to the back rows, far from the main proceedings. This time, however, a new directive had been issued. All seating was to be strictly alphabetical. I had to suppress a laugh when I saw Mark, a colleague notorious for his sycophantic behavior towards management, looking miserable all the way in the last row. It served him right. I was curious to see how he would perform without his usual proximity to the bosses. Thanks to my own last name, I found myself with a seat right in the front. While a colleague next to me stepped out to get a coffee, I took the opportunity to check my phone, which had been buzzing nonstop. The messages were all from Leo. "Sweetheart, I managed to swap my seat so I can be closer to you when I speak later," one read. It was followed by a rapid succession of others. "Why aren't you replying? Are you busy? Is your department being overworked again? I can have a word with your manager if I need to. I miss you. What should we have for dinner tonight?" I quickly typed out a response before his mild concern could escalate into a full-blown panic. "I'm not busy, and please don't scold my boss. He's innocent this time. Let's have your homemade pasta tonight." I knew from experience that a prompt and specific reply was the only way to prevent a continuous stream of messages. When my colleague returned with her coffee, I slipped my phone back into my pocket. "Texting your husband again?" she teased with a friendly smile. "You two are really sweet." I just smiled without saying anything. "You know," she continued, "I've never actually seen your husband. What does he look like?" I almost laughed out loud. The truth was, she and everyone else in the company had definitely seen him. Just then, the doors to the meeting room swung open and a group of senior executives filed in. Everyone rose to their feet to applaud. Leading the procession was a man in a perfectly tailored suit, his features sharp and his jawline chiseled. He carried himself with an air of authority that spoke of years of leadership and success. "Isn't our CEO just ridiculously handsome?" someone whispered from the row behind me. "Seriously," another voice added, "if the sky were falling, he looks like the kind of man who could hold it up with one hand." Leo Sterling, the rising star of the corporate world, didn't just run a multi-billion-dollar empire. He looked like he could have a side career as a movie star. It was no surprise that half the company seemed to have a crush on him. "He's looking especially sharp today," someone else murmured. "Look at how perfectly his tie matches his suit. Such impeccable taste." I had to stifle another laugh. Only that morning, Leo had been fussing over that very tie, insisting it didn't match my outfit. He'd spent ages rummaging through his closet to find one he thought coordinated better, and it took me a full 30 minutes to convince him to just let it go. Yes, Leo is my husband. We've been married for a year now, after a small private wedding overseas with only a handful of guests. Back home, hardly anyone knew, and that was by choice. Leo had pouted about it for weeks, worried that I was ashamed of him or trying to hide our relationship. In reality, we just didn't want the unnecessary attention it would bring. As the meeting began, Leo stepped up to the microphone at the front of the room. A hush fell over the crowd, though I could tell many were more focused on admiring his appearance than on preparing to listen to his words. "I want everyone to focus on efficiency," he began, his voice clear and firm. "Let me be very clear. This company does not encourage overtime. When your workday is over, go home. Spend time with your families." As he spoke, he cast a subtle but deliberate glance in my direction, a clear reference to the late night I had pulled last week. Of course, my department, led by Mark, completely missed the nuance and twisted his words into the exact opposite of their intended meaning. "Did everyone hear what Mr. Sterling said?" Mark exclaimed, standing up with an overly dramatic air. "We must respond to his call and improve our efficiency. Does anyone have suggestions? I exchanged a weary look with my colleague, Sophie. Let's hear some ideas on boosting productivity, Mark continued enthusiastically. We'll compile them into a report. This was Mark's signature move, collecting everyone else's input, repackaging it, and sending it to the boss late at night as his own brilliant work. Clara, let's hear from you, he said suddenly, snapping me out of my thoughts. Caught off guard, I blinked and then replied simply, I think Mr. Sterling meant we should leave work on time. Mark's expression immediately soured, and he shot me a glare. This is exactly why you're still at the bottom, he sneered. You just don't understand what the higher-ups really want. I nearly burst out laughing at his audacity. Imagine him telling me that I didn't understand my own husband's intentions. By 6:30 p.m., my phone was buzzing again, this time with notifications from the company group chat. Mark, Mr. Sterling just posted in the main chat, someone wrote. Panic flashed across Mark's face as he scrambled for his phone. Sure enough, Leo had tagged him directly. Why is your department still working overtime? Did you ignore my instructions from today? Meanwhile, I had 10 more private messages from Leo, all sent during the meeting, each one growing more impatient. I could easily picture Mark's face draining of color as he hastily instructed everyone to clock out. After scanning my keycard, I headed straight for the basement parking garage. As the elevator doors slid open, a familiar car was already waiting. The moment I got in, before I could even buckle my seatbelt, Leo wrapped me in a tight embrace, his familiar cologne filling the quiet space. After a moment, he reluctantly pulled back and fastened my seatbelt for me. Sweetheart, I've been waiting for you forever, he murmured as he started the car. We made a quick stop at the supermarket for groceries before heading home. Leo preferred to keep our home as a private sanctuary, so he handled all the shopping and cooking himself. Our housekeeper only came twice a week to clean. Once we were home, I settled onto the sofa and scrolled through my phone while Leo put on an apron and started preparing the pasta sauce. As he rolled up his sleeves, I admired the view of his well-defined forearms. When I looked up, I met his gaze. Why don't you come over here, sweetheart? You'll get a better view from up close, he suggested. At home, Leo had one unbreakable rule. I was never to be too far from him. He needed me within his line of sight at all times. Come here, sweetheart, he beckoned again. I walked over to the kitchen and he wordlessly drew me close, trapping me gently between his chest and the counter. No reason, he said, anticipating my question. I just wanted a kiss. He leaned down and placed a soft kiss on my forehead. Hurry up with dinner, I'm starving, I teased. Don't worry, my love, I won't let you go hungry, he replied, whispering tenderly in my ear as he continued to prep the ingredients. I was about to respond to his playful flirting when my phone rang unexpectedly. To my surprise, the caller ID showed it was Mark. I instinctively glanced at Leo, whose expression immediately darkened. Put it on speaker, he commanded, his voice taking on a chilling edge. I'd love to hear what he has to say. I switched the phone to speaker mode and Mark's voice filled the kitchen. Clara, I've noticed you've been clocking out on time recently. Seems like you're quite efficient at work, huh? How about this? Write me a report tonight and leave it on my desk before you come in tomorrow. So now, leaving on time was a punishable offense. Leo's face grew stormy, and just as he was about to say something, Mark abruptly hung up. I wasn't sure if I should feel relieved for Mark or pity him. Well, you go ahead and finish cooking. I'll get started on that report, I said, trying to make a quick escape. But Leo was faster. He caught my arm before I could slip away. Forget the report. It's after hours, and as the CEO's wife, you don't need to answer to him. I'll fire him tomorrow, Leo stated firmly. Don't be like that, I protested. Mark's not a bad person. Sure, he's a bit of a bureaucrat, but he's competent. You need to be more rational, Leo. It's important to manage talent effectively. I tried to reason with him, worried that he would let his protective instincts as my husband interfere with his responsibilities as a CEO. Other chief executives were constantly traveling, reviewing documents, and planning for their company's futures. But for Leo, the moment he clocked out, his focus shifted entirely to grocery shopping and cooking for me. Unless the company was literally on fire, He wouldn't even glance at his work phone after hours. I had to admit, though, his culinary skills were impeccable. The meat sauce he was simmering smelled absolutely heavenly. The next morning, I woke up to find breakfast already waiting for me. There was warmed milk, heart-shaped fried eggs, and sandwiches filled with my favorite toppings, all layered with fresh vegetables and meat. In stark contrast, Leo's own breakfast consisted of nothing more than a simple cup of black coffee. "Sweetheart, are you still feeling unwell?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "Do you want to take the day off? I can call HR and tell them you don't need to come in." "You'd better be quiet," I muttered. If I was feeling sore, it was entirely his fault for his activities the previous night. How could he not realize that? After breakfast, we headed to work together in his car. As usual, he stopped a block away from the company building, insisting I walk the rest of the way. He never let me leave without a goodbye kiss, which often turned into a prolonged makeout session that made me risk being late. Today was no exception. I barely made it on time, swiping my card just as Mark's sour face appeared before me. "Is that report done?" "Let me see it," he demanded. "Not yet," I said, scrambling to come up with an excuse when a voice called out from behind me. "Mark, Mr. Sterling wants to see you upstairs." Mark's expression shifted instantly from annoyance to a forced, obsequious smile. The messenger was Leo's personal assistant, the only other person in the company who knew my true identity. Once they had left, I returned to my desk where my colleagues were still gossiping about yesterday's meeting. "God, I couldn't stop laughing at Mark getting called out like that," one of them said. "Our boss is amazing, actually paying attention to the well-being of us low-level employees." Mark had never imagined that he would be publicly reprimanded by the CEO for not letting his team leave work on time. While my computer powered up, I couldn't resist eavesdropping. Suddenly, my desk neighbor Sophie whistled. "Clara, you're looking extra nice today," she complimented. Confused, I glanced at her. She handed me a small mirror, and my eyes widened in horror. When on earth had Leo given me a hickey on my neck again? Worse, I hadn't noticed it to cover it up. How embarrassing. I was about to call Leo and give him a piece of my mind when I saw a new string of messages from him on my phone. "Sweetheart, I'm already in the office. It's getting colder today. Make sure to cover your legs with a blanket. Come nap in my office at lunchtime. It's too cold to rest at your desk." His meticulous reminders kept coming, leaving me with no room to stay angry at him. Around noon, Mark returned to the office looking pale and shaken. It was clear he'd been severely scolded. Leo, known for his biting sarcasm when angered, could reduce someone to shreds with just his words. Sophie and I headed to the company cafeteria for lunch. The food wasn't as good as usual, likely due to a new chef, so I casually mentioned it in a text to Leo. His immediate response was, "Then come to my office for lunch. After you eat, you can take a nap here too." He even sent a cute kissing emoji. It was hard to imagine a man over 6 feet tall, a titan of industry, using such an adorable emoji. Who could possibly resist that? Back at the office after lunch, we were all surprised. Although it was only early November and the weather had just turned chilly, the office was already cozy with the heating on. "What's going on?" someone asked. "It's a new company policy," another colleague explained. "Now that it's getting colder, we'll have the heat on during lunch breaks, and the break time has been extended by half an hour." Anyone could guess this was Leo's doing. During the extended lunch break, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. "Sweetheart, are you sure you don't want to come up and rest? I can even warm the bed for you." "Was the food not good today?" "I'll have the admin department handle it." "What do you want for dinner? I'll make it up to you," I replied, absent-mindedly, half engaged in our chat. Later that afternoon, just before the end of the workday, the office was buzzing with new gossip. The administration department had announced that the company was hiring new chefs and that we could all vote on the dishes we wanted on the menu, which would be updated weekly based on our votes. "Oh my God, our boss is so considerate," someone exclaimed. Sophie leaned on my shoulder with a sigh. "Seriously, our boss is so thoughtful. I'm so envious of his wife. Imagine being married to such a handsome and caring man." "I know, right?" I replied, feigning nonchalance. Honestly, being with Leo was the best thing that had ever happened to me. Even now, I sometimes woke up in the middle of the night in disbelief, wondering if I was still dreaming. But then I would see him sleeping beside me and realize that it was all real. This perfect one in a million man was truly my husband. While we were chatting happily, the deputy general manager, Isabel, suddenly appeared. Isabel, what brings you here? Mark greeted her with his usual sycophantic smile. Isabel glanced at her watch and said softly, I'll be going on a business trip with the CEO, but we need one more person from the department to join us. I understand, Mark said quickly. I'll get everything prepared right away. Once the meeting is over, I can be ready to go. No need, Isabel cut him off and turned her gaze to me. Clara, please get ready. The flight is at 9:20 tomorrow morning. Don't be late. And with that, Isabel left, her efficient style leaving no room for questions. As soon as she was gone, Mark's expression darkened, and he shot me a cold, disdainful look. Well, since you have a trip tomorrow, you might as well head home early today to prepare. When my colleagues found out I was going on a business trip, they were all envious. After all, traveling with the CEO meant enjoying excellent perks. Personally, I wasn't particularly excited. Perhaps it was because Leo and I often traveled together for leisure, but this was the first time we would be going on a work trip together. When I got home, just as I expected, Leo was in the walk-in closet, packing our luggage. After checking the weather forecast for our destination, he had thoughtfully pulled out an extra jacket for me. This trip won't involve much work, but it will take quite a bit of time, he explained with a hint of exaggeration. The thought of not seeing you for so long was unbearable, so I had no choice but to bring you along. He even threw me a smug look. Am I your lucky charm or something? I thought. Little did the people at the office know, the real reason Leo was bringing me on this trip was simply because he couldn't stand to be away from me. The next morning, Leo's assistant came to pick us up. We arrived at the airport to find Isabel already waiting. When she saw Leo and me standing together, her expression showed a flicker of surprise. I quickly explained that we had just run into each other at the airport entrance. Leo, however, seemed entirely unconcerned. Isabel's gaze held a mix of curiosity and a tinge of hostility. Yes, hostility. A woman's sixth sense never lies. The assistant had booked 4 first-class seats. As we were about to board, Isabel sidled up to me. Never flown first class before, huh? Well, here's your chance, she said with a touch of condescension. Ahead of us, Leo turned to glance at her, his expression hidden behind his sunglasses. I let out a soft chuckle. Not really, but I have flown first class before when traveling the world with my husband. Despite half his face being obscured, Leo couldn't conceal the smile that played at his lips. Isabel, on the other hand, gave me a sidelong glance and remarked dryly, How charming. You and your husband make quite the pair. Once we boarded the plane, I was taken by surprise, as the assistant had arranged for Leo and me to sit together in the front, while Isabel and the assistant themselves took the seats behind us. Just as I was settling into my seat, Isabel approached briskly. Leo and I need to discuss some work matters. Could you move to the back? She demanded. I frowned, but before I could even reply, Leo removed his sunglasses, his annoyance clear. Whatever it is, it can wait until after we land. Go back to your seat, he said firmly. Isabel didn't argue, but as she turned to leave, her look was laden with meaning, and she walked back to her seat with a defiant click of her high heels. I ended up dozing off during the flight. When I awoke, I found myself not only covered with the airline's blanket, but also draped with Leo's jacket. Keen to avoid drawing attention, I quickly returned his jacket before Isabel could notice. Leo gave me a look of mock indignation. You owe me for this, he joked, although we were on a business trip, not at home. Upon our arrival at the hotel, the receptionist handed us 4 room cards, all on the same floor. Isabel accepted the cards with a smile. It's truly a privilege to have Mr. Sterling with us on this trip. Otherwise, we'd never get to stay in such a nice hotel, she noted. Leo kept his usual stoic demeanor, appearing unimpressed by anything. Yet, when we were alone, his affectionate side came out. If I didn't know him so well, I might have suspected he had a dual personality. I kept a slight smile on my face, but remained silent, sensing that Isabel's comment had an undercurrent directed at me. Her intentions seemed far from simply appreciating Leo's generosity. After we checked in, the assistant suggested we all rest and start fresh the next day. No sooner had I reached my room than I received a text from Leo. "Sweetheart, I miss you." His message made me chuckle. "Really, Leo? Do you think I'm oblivious to your antics?" I considered dismissing his playful advance, but then he sent a picture of a small pink pouch. "Sweetheart, your sleep mask somehow ended up in my suitcase. Do you want me to bring it over, or will you come and fetch it?" Reluctantly, I made my way to Leo's room. I had barely knocked when the door swung open and a strong arm pulled me inside. As the door closed, I caught a glimpse of Isabel's door opening across the hall. The surprise on her face was unmistakable. "It's over," I sighed. "I don't think I can keep my identity hidden much longer." Leo, however, seemed unconcerned as he massaged my shoulders while I applied my makeup the next morning. "We're married, not sneaking around. Who cares if someone finds out?" he reasoned. "But what if she spreads it around? Then the whole company will know," I argued, loathing the idea of being confined at home with nothing to do. Whenever I considered switching companies, Leo would become overly protective, worrying that I might be mistreated. But working in his company while keeping our relationship a secret meant I could never fully engage in office gossip or casual chats with my colleagues. "Don't worry, I'll have a word with her," Leo reassured me, his hands beginning to wander again. I swatted him away. He would probably love nothing more than to announce our relationship to the entire world. Deciding to bide my time, I waited to see if Isabel would confront me, but she remained silent the entire day. I began to wonder if I had imagined that meaningful look she gave me. On the third day, Leo attended a meeting with business partners, and his assistant joined him at a banquet. Meanwhile, Isabel and I shared a taxi back to the hotel. Out of the blue, she asked, "Clara, how long have you been married to your husband?" "Just over a year, almost 2 now," I responded. "That's still the honeymoon phase, isn't it?" Isabel remarked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Everyone says there's always someone better out there, but we should appreciate what we have, don't you think? I can't stand those who are married but still play around," she added, her words dripping with implication. Playing along, I agreed. "Absolutely, that's why I treasure my husband dearly." "Good," she replied with a mocking tone. "Because if it wasn't yours to begin with, it's best not to dream about it. Sometimes, even if you manage to grasp something, you might not be able to hold on to it." I smiled thinly and retorted, "But Isabel, do you think you could keep it if you had it?" I was not blind to her intentions, and her question hung in the air between us. Her smile vanished, replaced by a frosty expression. "Men don't just go for looks, especially successful ones," she said coolly. "They care about what a partner brings to the table. You're still young, so don't waste your potential." When we arrived at the hotel, I watched her rummage through her purse for her room key. I couldn't help but chuckle and casually remarked, "Have you ever considered that Leo might actually be my husband?" Though Leo and I had always kept our relationship low-key, he never tried to hide the fact that he was married. He wore his wedding ring proudly, never once taking it off. Isabel let out a short, disbelieving laugh and gave me a once-over. "You really are a dreamer." The business trip stretched out to more than 2 weeks. My role during this time was mostly behind the scenes, dealing with small, unremarkable tasks, so I couldn't really blame Isabel for having her doubts about me. Still, I had to smile quietly to myself. Who was the one dreaming, really? As if to prove a point, Isabel threw herself into her work over the next several days, going above and beyond to demonstrate her value. She constantly sought Leo's attention, jumping at every opportunity to present her ideas or highlight her accomplishments. Eventually, even the assistant had to gently intervene. "Miss Isabel, your dedication is appreciated," she said kindly. "But there's really no need to push yourself so hard. Mr. Sterling values his personal time. Please be mindful." I nearly laughed out loud at the look on Isabel's face. Despite all the subtle jabs she'd thrown my way, here she was, practically doing unpaid overtime to benefit my husband's company, and yet she honestly believed she had a shot at winning him over. How delusional. After the project wrapped, Leo gave me 3 days off to rest. But when I saw that Isabel was already back in the office, working diligently as if nothing had happened, I couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. I was part of the team too, after all. I only lasted a day at home before I decided to head back to work. But the moment I walked into the office, I noticed something was off. People were staring, not openly, but I could feel it. There was a shift in the atmosphere. During lunch, Sophie pulled me aside and whispered, "Did you do something to upset Isabel during the business trip? Yesterday, while you weren't here, she publicly criticized one of your reports in a meeting." I was stunned. I shook my head. "No, not that I know of." That afternoon, Isabel called for yet another department meeting to review the previous month's performance. Near the end, she zeroed in on me. "Clara's performance last month was disappointing. I hope you can take your work more seriously this month and show some real improvement." That made it 2 days in a row she'd called me out in front of everyone. It wasn't subtle anymore. Isabel was clearly targeting me, and the shift had started right after the business trip. After work, several colleagues gathered around to comfort me. One of them suddenly grabbed my hand with a look of realization. "I get it now. You must have spoken to Mr. Sterling during the trip, right?" I held back a laugh. If only they knew the truth. I don't just talk to Leo. I sleep next to him every night because he's my husband. But looking at how serious they all were, I decided to play it safe. "Oh, last time I just happened to run into Mr. Sterling in the hotel restaurant," I said casually. We exchanged a few words, that's all. Apparently, even something that minor was enough to set Isabel off. If a simple hello could rile her up this much, I couldn't begin to imagine what would happen if she knew the full truth. And so, the tension continued to build. Just as I expected, I was summoned to Isabel's office a few days later. She reviewed my latest report with an unnecessarily critical eye, pointing out alleged flaws that made little sense. Then, with a look of contempt, she tossed the papers back at me. "Take this back and redo it. What is this garbage? Don't bring junk like this to me again." It was almost laughable. Isabel clearly enjoyed wielding her authority, even if it was over the CEO's wife. I walked out of her office, report in hand, and returned to my desk. Immediately, several coworkers gathered around, looking worried. "If even your proposal got rejected, what chance do the rest of us have?" One of them sighed. I gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder and chuckled softly. "Don't worry, yours will be fine." Deep down, I knew the truth. Mine was the only one that got torn apart. Sure enough, that afternoon, Isabel sent a message in the department group chat. "I've reviewed all the proposals. They're all excellent except Clara's. Hers was unacceptable. Please revise and resubmit it to my office by tomorrow morning." Sophie gasped as she read the message. "Oh no, Clara, you've fallen into the office death trap. You're officially on the boss's blacklist." I didn't say anything. I just quietly got to work on revising the report. But Sophie, ever the gossip, couldn't hold back. "Wait, isn't Mr. Sterling already married? Why is Isabel still chasing after him seriously?" Another colleague muttered, "She acts like she's all modern and independent, but I once heard her drunkenly say that Mr. Sterling's wife must be some pampered little canary who doesn't deserve him. She said only a self-made woman like her could truly be his equal." "But no one's ever actually seen Mr. Sterling's wife," someone else added. Sophie glanced around to make sure no one was listening in, then leaned in and whispered conspiratorially. I could almost visualize the scene unfolding. "Mr. Sterling's wife is apparently working right here in our company." My heart raced, and I leaned in closer, my curiosity reaching its peak. Could it be that they had figured out my secret? "I swear I heard it from Mr. Sterling's assistant," Sophie confided, having accidentally let the detail slip. A chorus of gasps echoed around the room. Wow, the boss's wife has been right under our noses this whole time. Sophie turned to me with a penetrating gaze. "Let me ask you something," she said. My palms started sweating as I swallowed hard. "What is it?" I stammered. "Do you know who Mr. Sterling's wife is?" I shook my head quickly, trying to mask my nervousness. Sophie sighed in disappointment. "I thought since he even brought you on the business trip, you might know." "How boring," she muttered under her breath. I breathed a silent sigh of relief and turned back to my computer to continue revising my report. Then, Sophie's next sentence struck like a bomb, freezing everyone in the room. "Have you guys ever considered that it might be Isabel?" Sophie's analysis was surprisingly sharp. "Leo is married and his wife works right here. No wonder the company benefits are so good. Have you noticed how Isabel always acts so arrogantly? Anyone who gets too close to Leo seems to become her target. I wouldn't rule out the possibility that she's his wife. I had to admit, even I, the person directly involved, wanted to applaud her for such a keen observation. Within a week, this gossip had spread like wildfire, becoming the main topic of conversation during lunch breaks throughout the company. Meanwhile, Sophie, the originator of the rumor, was now trembling with fear. "What if Leo finds out? Will I get fired?" she asked, her voice shaky. I reassured her, "You won't be fired. After all, Leo is so focused on his work during the day that he wouldn't bother with these office rumors." "But," Sophie interjected, "I think Isabel has already heard about it. Have you noticed how she's been acting weird lately? Carrying around even more expensive bags, and sometimes when I ask where she's going to eat, she just looks shy and doesn't answer." I was clueless about Isabel's recent behavior. Between endless revisions on my proposals, I had neither the time nor the energy to monitor her movements. I thought it was just idle speculation, but a week later, another bombshell dropped. David, the marketing manager, confronted Isabel in her office with the door wide open, allowing the entire office to overhear their heated argument about budget issues. David had a solid point, but then Isabel, with a playful toss of her hair and a smirk, conceded, "All right, this is my fault. I'll talk to Leo about the budget tonight." Everyone knew that Leo couldn't be contacted after work hours. Isabel's words virtually confirmed her marriage to him. David's face turned pale, and after a quick apology, he slunk away. As Isabel walked out of her office, she shot me a parting glare. "Please don't mention today's incident to anyone. I prefer to keep things low-key," she said with a forced smile. Later that night, as I was mulling over the situation, Leo, clearly upset, grabbed my face in frustration. "It's our couple time. What are you thinking about? You're ignoring me," he complained. I struggled to change the subject. "Aren't you still looking at that partnership proposal? I heard the assistant said you need to review the documents soon." Leo brushed it off. "Forget it. We can do it tomorrow. I work fast. It'll be fine," he insisted, leaning in closer. Just then, my phone rang. Leo clenched his teeth in annoyance as we both stared at the ringing phone. I answered the call, and Isabel's furious voice blared from the other end. "Look at this proposal you sent me. I can't understand a word of it. Rework it and have it on my desk before work tomorrow, or I'll deduct your pay." Leo's temper flared. Snatching the phone from my hand, he snapped, "If you don't understand the proposal, then learn something. Don't bother her after work hours. Just leave her alone," before slamming the phone down. Leo dropped my phone on the floor with a frustrated sigh, leaving me dumbfounded. Oh no, how am I going to face Isabel tomorrow, I worried. The next day, I arrived at work feeling completely drained. As soon as I sat at my desk, a stack of documents was abruptly thrown in front of me. Isabel stood there, her expression dark and furious. "Get all of these done. If you can't finish them, stay late. I want them all tomorrow," she ordered coldly. The stack was nearly a week's worth of work, and even Mark couldn't hold back. "Miss Isabel, this is too much. Is it urgent? If so, I can have others stop their work to help get this done," he suggested. Isabel abruptly turned to glare at him, her eyes blazing with fury. How could she not finish this? She has time to seduce other people's husbands, doesn't she? I'm sure she has plenty of time for work. The room fell utterly silent, and everyone gasped in shock. "Isn't there some misunderstanding here? Clara's not like that," Sophie interjected, forcing a nervous laugh and nudging me to explain. I stood up, locking eyes with Isabel. "Is Leo your husband? Is that why you're so concerned about what I'm doing?" The room erupted in gasps, and I knew I would be the talk of the company for the next week. "You admit it! You seduced Mr. Sterling and climbed into his bed!" Isabel screamed, her voice tinged with hysteria. She lunged at me, and I had to quickly step back as several people rushed to hold her back. Her usual polished appearance was gone. Her clothes were disheveled, and her eyes burned with hatred as she glared at me. As the scene became more chaotic, I decided to call Leo. "Hey babe, miss me?" I said into the phone, keeping my tone light. Leo's deep voice filled the speaker, and since I was on speakerphone, everyone in the room could hear clearly. Isabel froze, her body going rigid. Sophie's eyes widened in shock. "So, you're the boss's wife?" she whispered. I smiled slightly, realizing it would be hard to keep a low profile at the office after this. Leo arrived within minutes, his expression serious. Isabel's eyes shook with disbelief as she muttered to herself, "This can't be happening." Leo walked toward me, took my hand, and lowered his voice. "What happened? Is someone bullying you?" I briefly explained the situation, and Leo's frown deepened. He pulled me closer, his arm protectively around my shoulders as he addressed the room. "Yes, Clara and I are married. We've kept it quiet because we wanted her to work without distractions." He paused, glancing at Isabel, who was still shaking her head in denial. "Let's talk in my office," Leo suggested, leading me away. I could either stay and face a barrage of questions or endure the suffocating silence that was sure to follow. I chose to retreat. In Leo's office, he personally made me a cup of milk, his way of offering comfort. Isabel remained nearby, glaring at me with venom. Before long, the HR director arrived with some colleagues. "We need to discuss Isabel's departure," the HR director announced. "Are you firing me just because of her?" Isabel's eyes widened as she pointed at me. Leo stepped in front of me, blocking her view. "She's my wife. I won't let anyone bully her." Isabel was finally escorted out by the HR director, her angry shouts echoing down the hall. Leo leaned against me, his voice playful yet tinged with hurt. "You didn't tell me about all this. You don't trust me, do you? I'm so sad." I sighed, looking up at him. "No, it's not that. I just didn't want to make things harder for you." He grinned, pulling me closer. "It's not hard at all. I only need you, darling. The company's yours. You can do whatever you want." Leo continued to tease me, clearly enjoying the moment, though I couldn't help but feel he was playing the role of the wounded party to gain my sympathy. Just then, the office door swung open, and the HR director, looking pale, rushed in, holding a stack of papers. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sterling, I didn't see anything," she stammered. Leo's cool, detached image was completely shattered, but true to form, he snapped back into his usual aloof self in an instant. "Next time, knock before you come in." "What is it?" he said, his tone ice cold again. The HR director, visibly trembling, handed him the documents. Leo signed without a word. Once the papers were signed, the HR director quickly left the office, practically running. Isabel had been fired. I stayed home for 2 days to avoid the office gossip and finally went back to work. The people in the office greeted me as usual, as if nothing had changed. The year-end meeting was fast approaching, and once again, we were seated in order according to the first letter of our names. Sophie looked at the message from the admin team and sighed softly. "I just found out that it's all Leo's doing. Even if your name doesn't start with a C, the admin will find a way to get you a seat in the front row." I blushed and stayed silent. "Why not just give you your own seat in the front, reserved for the boss's wife?" she teased. I couldn't help but think that Sophie really knew how to read her bosses. After all, Leo had thought about doing exactly that a while back. At the meeting, Leo gave his usual speech about the company's future, but his eyes occasionally flickered to me. After he finished speaking, he actually sat down in the empty seat next to me. As soon as the meeting ended and everyone started to leave, I suddenly felt dizzy. Before I could react, I blacked out and fell forward. "Clara! Babe!" I heard voices calling out as I fainted. When I opened my eyes once more, I found myself lying in a hospital bed. To my side, Leo was there, diligently peeling an apple for me. "What happened? Am I seriously ill?" I inquired, anxiety flooding my thoughts. "Babe," Leo began, his voice brimming with excitement. "You're pregnant." He grasped my hand, his joy unmistakable. "The doctor mentioned you're a little over a month along, but you've got low blood sugar, so you'll need to be extra cautious." I was stunned. Pregnant with Leo's child. As the reality set in, I prepared to head home later that afternoon. Before we left, Leo decided to meticulously copy down all the pregnancy care instructions displayed on the hospital wall. Dressed sharply in his suit, he fervently scribbled notes in his notebook, drawing curious glances from passers-by. "Why don't you just snap a photo and read it later at home?" I joked. "That won't do," he replied earnestly. "A good memory is no match for a reliable pen." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Ever since discovering our impending parenthood, Leo had been adamant that I stay home and refrain from returning to work. He became quite the household guardian, even chiding me if I so much as attempted to boil water. Your job right now is to rest, he insisted, poring over nutrition guides. If you need anything, just let me know. I chuckled at his earnestness. But my limbs are practically useless now. Do you think you can manage everything? I teased. Of course I can, he responded confidently, pulling out yet another book from his burgeoning collection. This one was titled Maternal and Infant Care, and beside it, another called Mood Regulation for Pregnant Women. Over the 7 months of my pregnancy, numerous colleagues visited to check on me. They all marveled at how Leo tirelessly took care of every detail. Sophie gave me a thumbs up. We all want to know, how do you manage to keep Leo so devoted? She asked. I smiled and shrugged. It's not about keeping Leo in line. He's just utterly in love. Besides, pampering, caring for, and listening to your wife is what a good husband is supposed to do, right? Everyone laughed, but deep down, I felt an overwhelming sense of fortune. Leo's unwavering dedication made me feel incredibly lucky to have him by my side.